radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 146, recorded on Friday, April 11th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we talk about liberation, baby!
Happy Liberation Day, post-Liberation Day, America.
But before that, we told you all last episode that you need to vote in the Wisconsin elections. And thanks to us,
single-handedly,
Susan Crawford is now victorious and will be the fourth liberal justice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, keeping the liberal majority for at least a little while longer. I think it's Rebecca Bradley. It's now time to expand our
the bad Bradley.
Strength.
There's a good Bradley and a bad Bradley. She is definitely the bad Bradley.
So yeah, she won by like 10 points.
Yes. It was the most expensive judicial race in history.
Yep.
The previous record was also a Wisconsin State Supreme Court race 2 years ago with Janet Protasewicz.
Well, I mean, it makes kind of sense when you have elections that are right after or right before very big elections, and it's like the only thing going on at that time.
Mm-hmm. And Wisconsin is a swing state.
Right. So people are just pouring money into it.
Yeah, and most of the Republican strategy for winning elections has been tested in Wisconsin.
Correct.
And that, I mean, mostly came when Scott Walker was the governor, destroying the unions, setting up all the grassroots efforts to go after school boards and local elections, all of that, gerrymandering the state legislature maps, all of that came from Wisconsin. So it is for the Republicans a really important strategic state. And yes, it's a very big deal that they don't have control of the state Supreme Court, which is the only thing keeping us from going back to the gerrymandered maps and abortion being illegal.
Right.
And oddly, I didn't see much of that in the advertising that I saw. It was all just who loves pedophiles and rapists more. Those were all of the ads. Brad Schimmel didn't give this guy a life sentence and he killed these people and that person was a pedophile and all this stuff, and the exact same thing,
just a different picture.
Right. And Susan Crawford lets out she loves pedophiles and rapists. That's all I saw. So I was a little bit apprehensive going into this election, because I thought, well, this is kind of the same thing that we did in the general election, right? With Kamala Harris.
And we're trying to court the middle of the road voters,
right,
with absolutely nothing as a message.
Right. And using issues that are traditionally favored to Republicans. So she's the tough on crime candidate. You think, well, if you really are worried about being tough on crime and that's your number one issue, you're probably a Republican voter anyway. So I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but luckily it did.
I mean, for what it's worth, I also saw some statewide Republican analysts, and they were talking about how the reason why Schimmel lost was because he also didn't go into the culture war stuff, like the transgender, the immigration stuff either. So, if it makes you feel better, apparently both sides didn't do what the bases wanted.
But yeah, 10 points, that's a huge victory. It's pretty much the same as we saw 2 years ago.
Well, and we should talk about exactly why as well, because I've been seeing a lot of Democrats. I don't know if you saw the New York Times shift maps where it's the blue arrows,
the
red
counties,
arrows.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And everyone's posting the New York Times one. It's from the 2024 election to this one. It's every county went blue compared to last year. We are back, baby. I'm no, calm down. I need to clarify, which makes me happy, obviously still. I was worried that without this election win, we'd have zero hope for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my last little bit of maintaining the traditional sense of data or polling data and things like that was the hypothesis that the Democrats have become, at least in Wisconsin, have become the Republicans of yesteryear, where Republicans were the ones who were highly engaged. They cared way more about off-year elections and the lower turnout elections, and that's why Republicans kept on winning all these smaller elections all the time. I want to make it very clear, Republicans Republicans in the Schimmel campaign said they met their vote turnout goal. They thought they were going to win with the turnout that they had. So let's keep in mind, Republicans turned out, and we didn't really sway the people that we thought we were going to sway. The only thing that happened was that their Democratic base in Wisconsin is far more engaged than the Republican base.
That hopefully they knew what they were voting for, even if it wasn't reflected in the ads that were run. Maybe they were just voting against Elon Musk because he became the face of this election and he is so incredibly unpopular. Maybe that was it.
Well, that was the crazy thing for me, which is like, yes, I understand that Trump just won the election, but I was getting flyers and ads like crazy saying like, Brad Schimmel is endorsed by Donald Trump and, Susan Crawford's going to reject and stop Donald Trump's agenda. Make sure you look Brad Schimmel to get Donald Trump's agenda through, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, Elon Musk supports this, make sure you do this. I got several Turning Point USA texts saying, men, you need to vote for Brad Schimmel.
I got that
this
too.
Women takeover of our state. Like, I had all this crap. And yes, Trump won just a few months ago, but his popularity right now and approval is in the toilet because people are finally realizing how shit of a president he actually is. And then you only paired it with the second most unpopular person in the entire country right now, which is Elon Musk.
I think Elon's probably less popular than Donald Trump.
I mean, I could see. I have no idea at this point, but I can see it.
I think a lot of the pushback that you're seeing is actually being directed at Elon Musk. Like, he is not just doing what Trump wants him to do anyway.
Sure.
So there's a lot of that where I personally know Trump voters who are upset, and they're upset at Elon Musk.
Correct.
So that's probably part of it. And Elon Musk literally tried to buy this election. He should be in jail right now because he definitely violated state law by bribing people to vote for Brad Schimmel. I don't know what's wrong with the justice system that they can't see it that way.
Money is speech, baby.
But he did. I mean, I think just objectively, when you're paying people to vote and you're endorsing a candidate, you're bribing people. And he definitely did that here. And do you know the reason why he was able to get away with this, right? Literally, the state law says you cannot hold a lottery to get people to vote, which is precisely what Elon Musk did.
Yeah, but I think, and I could be wrong here.
I know the reason.
Oh, okay.
So the reason, and if anyone's not familiar, they held this big rally in Green Bay.
Totally fair, not rigged.
Right. So they told people, we will give away $2 million checks to people at this rally. And the rally is, to get out the vote for Brad Schimmel. That is illegal, just on the face of it. You can't do that. The reason that they were able to get away with this is because it really wasn't a lottery.
Yeah.
It was predetermined ahead of time who they were going to give the money to.
Yeah.
And it was a Republican Party operative and the head of the college Republicans.
Yep.
So that's how they got it. They just lied to people.
Yep.
So fraud is, I guess, fine. And that's how they got around the law, which is absolutely ridiculous. But it just shows, like, that's who they are.
Yes.
This is exactly who we're dealing with.
This is the supposed moral majority.
Hucksters and con men. So, yeah, that is what happened. Elon Musk spent around $21 million supporting Brad Schimmel, and he lost. And a lot of people were pointing and laughing.
Yep.
As
they should.
Yeah, as they should, because that is a ridiculous amount of money to spend on a state Supreme Court race, which is as far away as it possibly can be from where Elon Musk lives.
Right.
And one of the things that he tried to, as I believe as the kids say, cope, was that he posted on Twitter that really the important thing in the election was not trying to get Brad Schimmel elected, which would have reversed the liberal majority on the Supreme Court, making it a conservative majority, and would have almost certainly led to an abortion ban in the state of Wisconsin and the maps returning to the control of the Republican majority state legislature.
Right.
That would have actually changed quite a lot.
Yes.
In the state of Wisconsin. And instead, Elon Musk said the important thing was that the referendum question passed, which was to enshrine the voter ID law into the state constitution.
Which is, if you know anything about Wisconsin politics, is the dumbest fucking takeaway I have ever seen.
Right. Well, the thing is, that changed nothing. Even
No.
if you are like, oh, the voter laws, we need to stop all this illegal voting, and you think that there's so much fraud and that's really important to you.
We already had that.
Yeah, this changed nothing.
Yeah, the only thing this did was enshrined in the Constitution so that Democrats would have a much more difficult time, if not impossible time, to try to get rid of it in the future.
They would have to do this.
They would literally have to do this. That is the only thing that changed with this entire thing. That's it. And I also have to clarify the fact that Elon Musk think that he spent $21 million to get this result is the dumbest thing ever. Because I could have told you, spend $0.
And it will pass.
And Wisconsin voters will pass this because we're idiots. And I think what's even more important and more interesting of a takeaway, in my opinion, is like I said, we had a huge Democratic-based turnout for this election for Susan Crawford. And I mean, we should also mention Jill Underly for the state superintendent as well. Even though Susan Crawford won by 10 points, the referendum passed by like 20 points.
Right.
So apparently even Democratic voters want this. And it frustrates the absolute hell out of me.
Well, it just shows how like little people really understand it.
Yeah, they just see voter ID as like, well, yeah, of course, I want people to stop fraud or whatever.
They don't understand, like, you have to be identified anyway.
Right.
It's just that making it be specific types of ID and limiting what will be accepted as identification really just disenfranchises poor people.
Correct. Well, and again, the amount of money that Elon Musk had to put forward to say this is the actual win. This is the important thing. You know, I saw, this other tweet, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, was that he was saying, well, you had to like lose something. You have to give up a piece to make sure you gain territorial advantage or whatever it was.
Yeah, so it is, I expected to lose, but there is value to losing a piece for a positional gain. Very chess referenced.
Which, if you guys didn't know, Elon supposedly hates chess because it's too far beneath him and it's too simple for him. So the fact that he's making chess references is the funniest fucking thing in the world to me. But anyway, what did you gain? This is not a huge gain.
No, nothing. You gained absolutely nothing.
There's a reason why Democrats didn't even campaign against this.
Yeah.
You stupid idiot.
Well, and it's just cope.
Of course it is,
right?
because he can't look like a loser.
Right. And then this is Donald Trump. I mean, like, this is right out of Donald Trump's playbook. Never admit that you lost, even though everyone knows you lost.
Correct. So at least we had some good news.
So we started with the positive. Let's move into our main segment.
I mean, the European Union won't take chicken from America. They won't take lobsters from America. They hate our beef because our beef is beautiful and theirs is weak. It's unbelievable. We can't sell corn to India. We can't sell rice to Asia.
For the main segment today,
what are you going to share with us?
We have a topical story. It's not the new format of our podcast, but sometimes things do align.
You picked one hell of a topic that has been changing every day since you told me you were going to do this.
So we are going to talk about Donald Trump's tariff and trade war. Now, to anyone who has been crying over the last couple weeks that were Trump supporters, voted for Donald Trump, but didn't think this is what they were going to get, I have some news for you. Tariffs were a key part of Donald Trump's campaign, and it was made very clear by his critics, including us,
because we're smart,
that this would have a negative impact on the U.S. economy as a whole and hurt the lowest income Americans the most.
Really?
You had to have been hiding under a goddamn rock if you didn't understand that going in, or lying to yourself, which is
also true,
I think, a conservative trait at this point. I am going to blatantly rip off this AP News article. We do link it in our show notes of the timeline of this trade war because it is comical and I think important to understand how convoluted and crazy this has been.
Also, can I just say this picture they chose for this thing is hilarious.
Well, I mean, it's Donald Trump. He thinks that he doesn't look like this, clearly, right? Because he made a big deal about the portrait, even though the portrait looked better than he does normally.
Yep.
And he still was like, oh, what is that horrible monster? Look, that's you, buddy.
Speaking of portrait, did you see how he just changed out like Obama's portrait with another one of him doing the flag thing?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he is a petty bitch.
They just posted it today.
Yeah, he's definitely a petty bitch, so that does not surprise me at all. But yeah, this picture just looks like Trump to me. Yeah, it looks weird as hell because his stupid orange foundation face.
We trying to make like a kissy face or something? Oh, God, dude.
He's doing duck face.
Jesus. All right.
He's in with the kids, you know.
He's in with the kids.
So, timeline of how we got here. We start with January 20th, Inauguration Day. In his inaugural address, Donald Trump promises, again, to tariff and tax foreign countries to, quote, enrich our citizens. He also reiterates plans to create an agency called the External Revenue Service.
Yep.
Which he thankfully has not yet wasted the money on doing.
I'm legitimately shocked we haven't seen this yet.
Right. And on that first day in office, Trump said that he plans to put 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico beginning on February 1st. He did not mention China. On January 26th, Trump threatened 25% tariffs on all Colombian imports and other retaliatory measures after Colombia's President Gustavo Petro rejected those 2 military aircraft flights with immigrants that we talked about.
It was his first big victory, supposedly, according to conservatives and Republicans.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, yeah, he really
showed
won.
the world who's boss.
And in response, Petro announced retaliatory 25% tariffs against the United States, but that was later reversed. They ended up accepting the flights, and like you said, it was seen as a win for Donald Trump, but really their big problem was don't use military aircraft, don't have the returning Colombians in handcuffs.
Yes.
That's what they wanted. That's what they got. I don't know. I guess Trump's a master fucking negotiator because he gave them what they wanted and they were okay with that. Art of the fucking deal.
Okay, can we just like quickly pause though about, and he's doing it again with, and I don't want to spoil anything or jump too far ahead, but now he's saying like all these countries are calling him and it's just, hey, you guys don't know how to make deals like I do. Like, and every time he describes any deal he's ever made, it's the most simplistic, like kindergarten level deal.
So, I mean, it's like if you were robbing a bank, right? And you had all the hostages inside the bank and you're threatening to shoot everyone and like the police negotiator calls you like, oh, look, they're groveling at my feet. I'm a master criminal. Like, no, like they... That's essentially what's going on.
And then you negotiate that you get rid of all the hostages for a lighter sentence and you claim that's a victory.
Right. It's just like, yeah, that's how that works.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
February 1st, Trump signs an executive order to impose tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. 10% on imports from China, 25% Mexico and Canada, that were set to begin February 4th. Trump gave himself the ability to do this by declaring a national emergency. I guess because of undocumented immigration and drug trafficking from China, Canada.
Yep.
That fucking Chinese border, we really need to clamp down. The announcement prompted swift outrage from all 3 countries who promised retaliatory tariffs as well. February 3rd, 2 days later.
After 2 days of chaos,
Trump agrees to a 30-day pause on his tariff threats against Mexico and Canada after supposedly, and this is another win that was declared for Trump, Canada and Mexico said that they would take border security and drug trafficking measures. All of the things that they agreed to were already in place.
Yep. It's also worth noting too, and we'll get into it later, because then he talks about how for the rest of the countries, we're being taken advantage of over and over again. They're ripping us off. Everyone's ripping us off. The USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, was signed by and were created and negotiated and signed by Donald Trump, where he said this was the best deal that was ever done among these 3 countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he thought NAFTA was unfair, so he created his own deal.
So if they were taking advantage of us, Jason, that has to mean he was so bad at negotiating with, Canada and Mexico from apparently he's the master of leverage. That's what I'm also hearing from Republicans. He's the master of leverage. And apparently he can't even get the best best deal as the United States
Right.
when talking with Canada and Mexico.
Right. Art of the deal.
Art of the deal.
One day later, February 4th, 10% tariffs on Chinese imports go into effect. China retaliates, announcing new duties on a variety of American goods, an anti-monopoly investigation into Google, 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas, 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and large engine cars imported from the U.S., which would take effect on February 10th.
It should also be worth noting this is officially the start of the current trade war we are in right now.
Yeah. February 10th, Trump announces plans to increase steel and aluminum tariffs on March 12th. He removes the exemptions from his 2018 tariffs on steel, meaning that all steel imports will be taxed at a minimum of 25%, and raises his 2018 aluminum tariffs from 10 to 25%. This guy who negotiated all these deals, moron. I don't know who did it. Piece of garbage. I make only the best deals. February 13th, Trump announces a plan for reciprocal tariffs, which is bullshit. Promise.
Period. End of story.
Yeah, we're not going to get into like the very specific math on a lot of this, but just know it's bullshit. Promise to increase U.S. tariffs to match the tax rates that other countries charge on imports for purposes of fairness. Economists warn that reciprocal tariffs set to overturn decades of trade policy could create chaos for global businesses.
This is also worth noting, while this was going on, this was during the whole like auto industry chaos. I don't even know if you remember that this week, because it's been such a hell of a long couple of months, my friend.
We're not even like a third of the way through this timeline.
I know. But it's also for all the listeners to remember, this is when auto manufacturers were losing their goddamn minds because they were going to have automobiles just skyrocket like crazy because they send parts back and forth between different countries inside and outside the US to make the cars. So we were looking at like doubling the price of vehicles in the United States, which scared the hell out of manufacturers, which scared the hell out of consumers, well, and the sellers.
And it's only gotten worse.
This was also during the infamous Fox News segment where it had the guy, they were talking to like a car dealership on Fox News, and he's like, I have all these cars on the lot. I don't know how I'm going to get rid of them. What do I do?
And Trump also begins threatening other countries such as India and Europe, and said that they won't be spared from higher tariffs.
Y'all won't be spared.
February 25th, Trump signs an executive order instructing the Commerce Department to consider whether a tariff on imported copper is needed to protect national security.
Why?
Because we use copper in electronics.
Okay.
I still don't know how you're protecting national security by making copper more expensive. He doesn't. It's clear he just does not understand tariffs are.
Does he want us to produce the copper here?
Get in the goddamn mine, Joe.
In all of our copper mines?
I'm sure that we have some untapped copper, but don't think we're going to be mining it. We kind of shouldn't have kicked out all the immigrants.
No kidding. We'll get to that too.
March 1st, Trump signs an additional executive order instructing the Commerce Department to consider whether tariffs on lumber and timber are also needed to protect national security, arguing that the construction industry and military depend on a strong supply of wooden products in the U.S. And again, how do those two things come together? We get like...
Bro, these 2x4s may be tapped. Oh, shit.
Like, yeah, we import a ton of lumber from Canada. How is making it more expensive to do that going to help?
Hurry, put taxes on it.
Jesus.
Go.
March 4th, Trump's 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico go into effect.
We made it a month. This is just a month. Oh, my God.
25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico go into effect. Though the limits were set to 10% on energy from Canada, and the tariff on Chinese goods was doubled from 10 to 20%.
Why? Because fuck you, that's why.
All three countries promised retaliatory measures. At the time, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announces tariffs on more than $100 billion of American goods over the course of 21 days. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says her country would respond with its own retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods without specifying what the targeted products would be, and signaled hope to de-escalate the trade war.
And for those of you also, apparently my mind's just destroyed by all this news because I remember I'm triggering all these memories now.
Right. It seems like so long ago.
I know. This was also during the whole thing where Canada was going to boycott Kentucky like bourbon and whiskey.
They pulled all that off the shelf.
Yeah.
And it really did hurt American industry.
Right.
Big surprise. Yeah, good job with your tariffs. You're really protecting the country. China, meanwhile, imposed tariffs up to 15% on a wide array of U.S. farm exports, set to take effect March 10th. It also expanded the number of U.S. companies subject to export controls and other restrictions by about 24. March 5th, Trump grants a 1-month exemption on the new tariffs impacting goods from Mexico and Canada for U.S. automakers.
Which, for the reasons why we just talked about before.
Right, and that came after Trump spoke with the leaders of Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis.
Who all begged him, for the love of God.
You are going to kill our industry. March 6th, we're going by daily increments.
I know.
In a wider extension, Trump postponed 25% tariffs on many imports from Mexico and some imports from Canada for a month, but he said he still planned to impose reciprocal tariffs starting on April 2nd. Trump credited Sheinbaum with making progress on border security and drug smuggling as a reason for pausing tariffs. So now the border's fixed.
I mean, apparently.
His actions also thawed relations with Canada somewhat. I don't know about that. I don't know if you saw like all the videos that were going around of people booing the American national anthem.
Oh my God, that happened too.
Yeah, Canada's not, and they're still not very happy, which, justified. After the initial retaliatory tariffs of 30 billion Canadian dollars on U.S. goods, the government said that it had suspended its second wave of retaliatory tariffs worth 125 billion Canadian or 87 billion U.S. March 10th, hey, we get like 4 days at a time now.
Oh, great.
Must have been the weekend in between there. China's retaliatory 15...
St. Patrick's Day is around this time, so maybe they took the day off to drink.
China's retaliatory 15% tariffs on American farm products, including chicken, pork, soybeans, and beef, take effect. Goods already in transit are set to be exempt, blah, blah, blah. March 12th, Trump's new tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports go into effect. 25% across the board. And that includes the removal of the exemptions from the tariffs that he had previously negotiated or set as well.
Fantastic.
The European Union takes retaliatory trade action, promising new duties on U.S. industrial and farm products. Measures will cover goods from the United States worth about $28 billion, not just steel and aluminum, but textiles, home appliances, and agricultural goods. Motorcycles, bourbon, peanut butter, and jeans will be hit as they were during Trump's first term. The 27-member bloc of the European Union later says that it will delay their retaliatory action until mid-April. So we still have that to look forward to. Canada, meanwhile, announced plans to impose more retaliatory tariffs worth $20.7 billion on U.S. imports set to go into effect March 13th, the next day. March 13th. Trump threatens a 200% tariff on European wine, champagne, and spirits.
Why?
If the European Union goes forward with its previously announced plans for a 50% tariff on American whiskey.
No, if we can't drink, nobody gets a drink.
And I'm sure, honestly, I prefer bourbon myself.
Me
but
too.
I'm guessing that a lot of people in Europe would be fine with sticking with the Irish and Scotch whiskey versus American whiskey.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So not quite as not quite as hard hitting, I think.
200% tariff on wine.
Yeah, European wine, champagne, and spirits. So
This is
all
the-
champagne.
This is the dumbest thing. This is so dumb. We elected the dumbest person to do
Yes,
this.
Yes, we did. March 24th. Trump says that he'll place a 25% tariff on all imports from any country that buys oil or gas from Venezuela, in addition to imposing new tariffs on Venezuela itself starting April 2nd.
What?
Apparently Venezuela pissed him off near the end of March.
Okay.
And I guess probably due to the fact that China is buying a lot of oil from Venezuela.
Or is it from like a potential like immigration thing maybe? Where all these supposed Venezuelan gangs are not being rounded up, I guess, or
yeah, it
something
doesn't
like that?
specifically say, and I don't remember anything.
I don't.
But who knows at this point? 2 days later, March 26th, we're getting close. We're almost here. Trump says he's placing 25% tariffs on auto imports, a move that the White House claimed would foster domestic manufacturing. We already manufacture. There's no room for more car manufacturing in the U.S.
Well, hey, I don't know about that. We can make a lot more Teslas, all right?
But it would also put a financial squeeze on our existing automakers that depend on global supply chains. Because guess what? We don't make the parts for those motherfucking cars here either. They may be assembled in a factory in the US, but we ain't making the parts to begin with. So he thinks he's hurting these foreign auto manufacturers by placing tariffs on the cars that we buy.
Yeah.
Right? So you'd think, okay, the market's going to shrink for foreign cars in the US.
We're all going to start buying Chevys.
Right.
The way your eyes just roll.
Everybody knows American cars are a piece of shit, and I own a Jeep, even though it's really a Fiat. But yeah, no, I don't. If
I have a Toyota,
I have a specific reason for having the Jeep, and that's just because the tow rating on, I don't like a big car. It's a Jeep Cherokee. It's a compact SUV. I like fishing. I'd like to own a nice boat someday.
Yep, so you want something that tows it.
Right. That's why I have a Jeep Cherokee. If not for that specific reason, I would never own a goddamn American car. Again, like least reliable cars. Everybody knows it. Our other car is a Mazda.
I mean, I own 2 Chevy sedans in my life, and boy, were those pieces of crap.
We had a Chrysler 300 that was just garbage. Like from the day we bought it brand new, too. It sucked. So instead of really causing, because these other countries can still sell their cars to each other, it's just America that would have this extra tariff. And he thinks it's going to help American auto manufacturers without seeming to understand that tariff would also hit all of the parts that they're importing to build their own cars. Just an idiot.
Which is also crazy because I also know that UAW, the United Auto Workers, was like one of the only unions that was like in favor of these tariffs.
Right. And of course, that American unions would be for insane tariffs on foreign goods.
Sure.
Like, they don't care, and they don't need to care about what the larger implications to the economy,
right,
what it's going to do.
It's job security.
Right. They only are thinking of their workers, which they should.
Yep.
And yes, from that narrow perspective, it makes sense. The president of the fucking country should have a broader view.
Well, let's listen to this too. Donald Trump doesn't care about the unions.
Right. Yes, he would hope that they would all just go away, and has also implemented many policies and laws that help that to happen. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more after we get through this timeline finally. But we'll move now. We're finally into April. Nothing on April 1st, not saying that this was all just a big joke anyway. Haha, gotcha, everybody.
Well, April 1st was our day. We won April 1st.
That was the
day
election.
Of election. Yeah. We're the fools who won.
So that brings us to April 2nd. Trump announced the long-promised reciprocal tariffs, declaring a 10% baseline tax on all imports from every country, including uninhabited countries that only have penguins living there and no people. Nothing on Russia for some reason.
Why.
I don't know, just big hoax. As well as higher rates for dozens of nations that run trade surpluses with the U.S. to take effect April 9th. And this heavily hits some of our closest allies as well. And we'll talk about what trade surpluses mean and why this is probably, and for this to be the thing that I'm going to say, the stupidest thing that Donald Trump has ever said or done. Just know the impact that has. I believe Donald Trump to be one of the stupidest people to ever live. And that might just be because I get to see it. I don't have like firsthand knowledge of every person that's ever lived, but of everyone that I do have firsthand knowledge of, he seems to be the dumbest to me. And this is the stupidest thing that he's ever come up with. Among those steeper tariffs, Trump says the U.S. will now charge a 34% tax on imports from China, 20% tax on imports from the European Union, 25% on South Korea, 24% on Japan, 32% on Taiwan. It's like where we get literally everything from. The new tariffs come on top of previously imposed levies, including the 20% tax Trump announced on Chinese imports. Meanwhile, for goods from Canada and Mexico, the White House says the USMCA, Mexico-Canada agreement that we talked about, compliant imports can continue to enter the U.S. duty-free. Once the two countries have satisfied Trump's demands on immigration and drug trafficking, the tariff on the rest of their imports may drop from 25% to 12%. I think this is kind of giving some of the, like, what's really going on here away. The next day, on April 3rd, Trump's previously announced auto tariffs begin. New Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says that Canada will match the 25% levies with a tariff on vehicles imported from the U.S. April 4th, we're again going in one-day increments. China announces plans to impose a 34% tariff on all imports from U.S. products beginning April 10th, matching Trump's new reciprocal tariff on Chinese goods as part of an escalating trade war. The Commerce Ministry in Beijing says it will also impose more export controls on rare earth minerals. That is like the number one product in the entire world right now for tech products.
Yes.
Computer chips, electric cars, like everything. Lithium is really, one of the main things that we're talking about. That's what the new oil is going to be, essentially, these rare earth minerals.
I'd argue it's pretty much already there.
Yeah. And the Chinese government adds 27 firms to the list of companies subject to trade sanctions or export controls. April 5th, Trump's 10% minimum tariff on nearly all countries and territories takes effect. Obviously, the stock market is fucking tanking through all of this. April 9th. Trump's higher reciprocal rates go into effect, hiking taxes on imports from dozens of countries just after midnight. But hours later, his administration, and this is like, the worst day in Wall Street, even worse than COVID. I think, I'm being a little hyperbolic. I think there was like a day in like 1985 randomly that was worse. I think, I don't remember what sparked that in 1985.
Sure.
But one of the worst days in stock market history, worse than COVID. Just, brilliant stuff from a brilliant guy. So hours after that goes into effect and the stock market free falls, the Trump administration says it will suspend most of these higher rates for 90 days while maintaining the recently imposed 10% levy on nearly all global imports, unless you're Russia, for some reason. China, however, is singled out. Following a threat to raise levies against China to a total of 104%, Trump says he will now raise those import taxes to 125%, effective immediately, continuing the back and forth that has been going on between the U.S. and China. In response, China upped its retaliation, vowing to tax American goods at 84% the next day.
Doing great, everybody.
Canada's counter tariffs on auto imports also take into effect. 25% levy on imports from the U.S. that do not comply with that USMCA pact. Also, EU member states vote to approve their own retaliatory levies on $23 billion worth of American goods in response to the steel and aluminum tariffs. The EU Executive Commission doesn't say specifically which imports it will tax, but says that its tariffs will come in stages. Some set to arrive on April 15th, others May 15th, and even December 1st. Yesterday, April 10th, the White House clarifies that Trump's previously announced 125% figure for China tariffs does not include the previous 20%, so it's actually 145%. The EU also says that its retaliation for the steel and aluminum tariff will be on hold for 90 days, which matches the Trump pause that we also are currently in. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen That's a hell of a name.
Yeah.
Says that the commission wants to give negotiations with the U.S. a chance.
Do you, though? Do you negotiate with terrorists?
Do you
I don't
know
think so.
who you're negotiating with? But she did warn that countermeasures will kick in if talks are not satisfactory. And even today, April 11th, China says it will raise tariffs on U.S. goods from 84% to 125%, matching the increased levies from the United States.
Are we winning yet? Is America great yet?
And that is set to take effect tomorrow.
Which, I mean, we are basically now, we have 145% tariffs coming from Chinese goods that are being imported. And now we have 125% tariffs of exports going out to China.
Right.
Which is essentially putting us in a trade embargo right now. Like, things are not going to be sent back and forth at this point from China.
And it's going to destroy Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
They're in a bad enough state right now with the way the movie industry is. China is like their only hope to survive right now, and that's going to be gone. And even if this trade war ends, there's so much bad blood, they're never going to see the U.S. the same again. And that finally takes us through the timeline of this trade war. I felt it was important to include that because I don't know how else to express just how chaotic this has been, with tariffs going into effect. No, wait, we're going to pause them. Now they're more. Now we're not going to do them. Now this, now that, now every country. Now it's going to be based on some crazy idea of fair trade. And
right, that's not even dealing with any type of actual, like, tariffs. It's now actually just trade surplus and trade deficits. And Trump doesn't know what a trade deficit is or why it's good or why it's bad. Like, oh my God.
Yes.
And Nintendo Switches are going for crazy amounts right now, and I can't pre-order my goddamn Switch.
Yeah, man. The new Mario Kart game is going to be like $150.
I know. The 80 was already pissing people off.
So I think the first question should obviously be,
what the fuck? Oh.
Well, why? Why are we doing this? What are the reasons?
That's a great question. And one that we have yet to get an answer for.
Right. At least a satisfactory one. I can give you the answers that the White House has given. The stated reasons are to generate revenue. That's not what tariffs are good for. Like you said with China, we're not going to be importing Chinese goods at 140, and it's really technically more than 140 because it's 140 on top of what we already had.
Right.
But we're not going to have, if the goods are going to be so expensive, no one's going to buy them. So no one's going to import them. So there's not going to be any revenue generated. And even with lower tariffs, you don't use them to generate revenue. You use them to try to manipulate the market. If you are a powerful car manufacturer and you have car manufacturers in your country that you're trying to protect, you use tariffs to try to get people to not buy foreign cars.
Correct.
You want them to buy domestic cars.
Correct.
So the whole point of implementing a tariff is to make people not buy those goods. So it's not, even though it can generate revenue, it's not very good at that as being a primary function. So using it as a way to generate revenue is really not a good idea because it's going to cause way more harm and you're not going to make a ton of money with it.
Because the actual things that the U.S. market would gravitate towards more U.S.-based products is very slim and narrow. And that pales in comparison to the just general taxes that they're just going to say, well, my car, my Kia, my Hyundai, whatever it is now just way more expensive.
Right.
My whatever phone is just now way more expensive.
Mm-hmm. And even if you're still going to buy those, people are going to be buying them less.
Correct. Because they're more expensive.
Right. The next reason is to balance the trade deficit. And
this one's wild.
It is just insane.
I don't understand it.
America has huge trade deficits because it's the richest country in the world. And it has one of the strongest currencies. That's like saying, I don't purchase as much as Elon Musk does. What the fuck?
You're right.
Well, yeah, no shit.
Right. Or it's like saying, well, what the hell? I have a trade deficit with my grocery store.
Right.
We should negotiate prices so it's more fair. No.
Right. Yeah, you of course you're buying more from them than they're buying for you. You don't sell anything. And the US doesn't really sell anything.
Correct. So, okay. I think the first thing we need to talk about with all these is that when Trump unveiled his like you said, his very stupid looking little board and list of things, they were not tariffs or reciprocal tariffs by any means. They called them that, but they were just literal trade deficits that he saw with these countries. and that they took some formula. I don't remember how it exactly works, and I don't really care right now because a million other people already dissected the hell out of that formula and the concept also showed why this was the dumbest fucking thing they've ever seen in their entire lives. Go look at them. Anyway, the first thing that we should probably be talking about is even the formula is already misleading, because when they talked about trade deficits, they were only counting manufactured goods. They were not counting service economies, which we are the
US
largest
is.
exporter in the world in service industries, such as things like healthcare, entertainment industries, tourism, you name it. We do all the service stuff because we are very quickly, I mean, we've already been there, not a manufacturing country anymore. We have become wealthy enough as a country where we don't need to do that, and we just provide service economy now. So the fact that we're already basing this off of just half of our information is insane.
Right. And even the very few countries that we have a trade surplus with, like Australia, because they're an island, it's still a 10% base.
Right.
So even though by this math we should be paying them, they still get a 10% tariff.
Okay, there's been a lot of talk about how they just actually plug this all into like Chat GPT or some nonsense.
Right, yeah, because that's what it seems like.
Because that's what it seems like. And to be honest, knowing this administration, I would not be shocked.
Yeah, and it's Grok. I mean, it would be Grok because that's Elon Musk.
You're right. That's the non-woke
People
one.
say Chat GPT, but it should be Grok.
You're right. But the fact that they didn't actually care enough to look at what they were doing, they started tariffing things in islands that weren't even inhabited by people. And on top of that, they were using this formula to basically tariff the hell out of like the smallest countries.
Right. Because, of course, we have trade deficits with them. There are like small countries in Africa that export diamonds, and the U.S. buys a ton of diamonds. But what the hell is Botswana going to buy from us?
Well, I have a piece here that I think it's just worth quoting from Derek Thompson from The Atlantic. Yes, I know, it's fine. About Lesotho, where in that initial line of tariffs, Lesotho got the highest rank of tariffs because, like Jason said, they are a very small landlocked country that doesn't buy anything from us because they are also a very poor country. But what they have are diamonds. So I want to just read a little small excerpt from Thompson's article. Quote, "The Trump team seems to have calculated each penalty by dividing the U.S. trade deficit with a given country by how much the U.S. imports from it and then doing a rough adjustment. Because Lesotho's citizens are too poor to afford most U.S. exports, while the U.S. imports $237 million in diamonds and other goods from the small landlocked nation, we have reserved close to our highest possible tariff rate for one of the world's poorest countries." The notion that taxing Lesotho gemstones is necessary for the U.S. to add steel jobs in Ohio is so absurd that I briefly lost consciousness in the middle of writing the sentence.
Right. And what is it? What is the actual impact going to be? They're going to export less diamonds to the United States. The diamonds that we get are going to be more expensive, and it's just going to hurt
Everybody.
both countries. And it's not, there's no benefit because they can't buy things from us. And this is just going to make that worse.
Well, it's the same thing with Vietnam. What are we trying to stick it to Vietnam for? What's Vietnam going to do to appease Donald Trump? What's Vietnam going to buy from us to stop this from happening? And even when you had countries like Israel, which by the way, it's Israel because, Donald Trump's favorite friend, say, hey, take these tariffs off and we'll take off all the tariffs and taxes or whatever nonsense we have on you guys, and you're just good to go. They caved. They did what Donald Trump wanted them to supposedly do.
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu would probably not be in power in Israel right now.
If it weren't for Donald Trump.
Right.
Correct.
So
they did it. They caved to Donald Trump. And guess what happened? They had the tariffs stay on them. They said, no, you keep the tariffs anyway. What are we doing?
Yeah. The United States basically designed the current global economy. It works for us. It's set this way
100%. 100%.
To benefit us. That's why we have such a big trade deficit. That's the way we designed it. We use underdeveloped countries as sweatshops to produce our cheap goods. And most of the time, it's U.S. companies that own those factories in the other countries. So we're the only ones benefiting in this scenario. And our dumbass president is crying that we're the victims. We're the oppressors. We always have been.
Right. And my only silver lining in this whole thing that you just brought up is the fact that Donald Trump was so stupid that the main people he's hurting the most are the billionaire donors who have been funding his presidency in 2024. CEOs were losing their minds over this. You had Elon Musk. I mean, I know there's a lot of other reasons why, but Elon Musk, I think, has lost over like 125 or 130 billion dollars. It was like a 30% of his net worth is gone since January.
He got into a spat with Peter Navarro.
Yes,
too, over
he
this.
did.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, did you see the response from the White House spokesperson?
No, I didn't.
Where she literally goes, "Oh, well, boys will be boys." I'm not kidding.
Like, Peter Navarro comes out with like this well-reasoned like argument why this is negative for Elon Musk, and then Elon Musk is like, well, you're stupid.
Basically.
That is really what happened.
Basically.
So the final reason that is being used, and we kind of talked about it, to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. We have no manufacturing or transportation infrastructure in the country anymore. We do not have the cargo rail lines, the shipping, the anything to even handle the movement of materials that would be needed to manufacture the goods that we purchase from around the world. Who is going to build the factories and train the workers? Who is going to work for minimum wage jobs?
Well, Jason, I just looked it up. Still, for years now, the unemployment rate for the United States is 4.2%. That's the current unemployment rate. There are approximately 7 million people that are currently unemployed.
Yeah, that wouldn't even make a
Those 7
dent.
million are going to completely redo our infrastructure?
Right, and all work for nothing and have all of these specialized skills that are needed. There is just no way that this is possible. And even if we could do that, American-made products would still be more expensive and no one would buy them from us.
No.
So it's never going to like balance this out. Even if we manufactured goods, our standard of living is too high.
Yes.
So stupid, and it's so obvious.
Well, and then did you see how Trump admin was now going on about how we need to bring back the tiny screw lines so that China has, where it's like where China basically has like these lines for your iPhones and smartphones where you have to put in these tiny screws into do these things. And he's saying that could be us. That could be us.
Yeah, you could work the job that people were literally throwing themselves out of the windows to the point where they had to install nets to catch people.
Yep.
Because their lives were so fucking miserable doing that.
And on top of that, there's also other clips going around right now of Trump's secretaries.
I'm lazy. I'm not putting them in the show.
It's fine. It's all good. I put the link in the notes. It's fine. Where he was point blank asked, so who's going to take these jobs if we already have low unemployment? And he goes, well, we won't have those jobs. We'll have robots do the jobs. What do you mean? Then what's the point?
Right. It's to benefit corporations. That's the idea. But then he said, oh, but we'll fix the robots and we'll become a nation of robot repairers.
Great.
Yeah, we're going to have 300, 400 million people.
Just all be robot repairers.
Right. Absolutely stupid. So what?
Tell your kids to go into engineering now.
So what is going to happen with all of these tariffs? Companies are just going to keep moving their manufacturing to countries that have the lowest tariffs with the US. Materials and labor will be much cheaper there still.
But let's be real here, though. That's the long-term projection. The short-term projections as of right now are companies aren't doing a damn thing because they're so scared of what's going on
right now.
Right. But that's kind of the whole point, right? Is that companies have no idea what they're going to do. They don't, Trump wants them to come back to the U.S. They don't want to come back to the U.S. because they're terrified.
Yeah. And again, there would be no point because of everything else that we talked about. The problem is other countries subsidize their manufacturing. China is at least still kind of sort of a communist country. Their government invests largely in corporations which it also partially owns, reducing costs. That's how they're able to manufacture goods so cheaply. The US does do this with military and weapons manufacturing. We highly subsidize all of those defense contractors. That is why the US is the global leader in arms exports. 43% of the total market is the United States.
So what you're saying, Jason, is we could have the far left and the far right come together in some weird...
Well, the problem is we don't benefit from it.
America First communism.
Right. Well, we need to actually start owning pieces of these companies so that instead of it just being these defense contractors making billions of dollars and then paying the Congress people that passed all the bills to give them the billions of dollars in funding, putting them on the payroll as a nice kickback at the end of their career for a couple $100 million. Instead of it being that way, it would be nice if we actually owned the goddamn company. And, we spent all that money developing the COVID vaccines, and we do that constantly for the medical industry.
Yep.
We could own those companies and profit and benefit the same way that China does. Maybe this trade war wouldn't be so one fucking sided. So those were the stated reasons. What do I think the real reasons are? Because none of those stated reasons are realistic. Even if you are as stupid as Donald Trump, I don't even think he believes any of that is possible. So what is he doing this for?
Well, according to Benny Johnson, it's to build character.
Yeah, put some hair on your chest.
So this is Benny Johnson basically coping so hard in such a depressive little sulking state, saying that actually we don't need money because it's all about life lessons.
This is going to be good for us all.
Losing money costs you nothing. This is just the reality of life. Were you young and dumb? How much money did you lose? Everyone loses money. Everyone loses money. It costs you nothing. In fact, it builds quite a bit of character. In fact, you learn a lot of lessons actually by losing money.
Boy, we sure built a hell of a lot of character after the Dust Bowl, didn't we? That's when we were real men.
The cope is so strong. I'm like, again, man, I know we do this all the time, and I'm going to do it again. Just imagine if this was Joe Biden or Kamala Harris doing this, and then what these little idiots would just say and scream into their cameras over and over and over again about how, actually...
They hate America. They're destroying the country on purpose. They're agents of the Chinese.
No, but in fact, we get philosophy 101 life lessons.
Right.
Money is the root of all evil, now that I think about it. I also saw, we were not going to play this clip, but I also saw another thing from Jesse Waters on Fox News where he was talking about basically saying, well, I don't know what the big deal is. What's people so worried about losing money? I just had my guys set me up and I'm going to look great after it.
Sure.
This.
Yeah, the guy making millions of dollars.
Oh, really,
on
Jesse?
Yeah. If I had your salary, I wouldn't really give a shit either. So what are the real reasons, as far as I can see them, for this trade war?
I have another clip where it shows Trump literally pointing at two billionaires saying they made billions of dollars. Could that be it, Jason?
Well, I think this trade war and the tariffs themselves are going to be used to justify keeping and expanding Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations.
No.
I think all of the funds that are going to be collected on these tariffs, they're going to be constantly, just like we had with the Doge, where they make shit up.
Yep.
It's going to be the same thing. They're going to say, we saved $10 trillion.
Yeah, get ready for that external revenue service report.
Right. And they're going to use that to justify keeping the Trump tax cuts from his first administration, which are set to expire this year.
Yep. And then probably go even further.
And yes, further cut. And he's already announced that they want to cut the corporate tax. It's already the lowest that's ever been. They want to cut it even further. And they're going to say that the money that they saved with, or that they generated with these tariffs are going to be used, and that'll pay for it. Early estimates that it's going to be more than $6 trillion to keep the Trump tax cuts, and $1 trillion a year for his new tax cut. That will be the biggest wealth redistribution from the bottom 90% of Americans to the top 10% in history. And we already have some of the highest wealth disparity since the fucking Gilded Age.
Yep.
And this will probably top that.
Serfdom 2.0.
It'll decrease taxes on all of the top income earners and move that tax burden onto purchased goods. This is the same thing that you have in many conservative states that have no state income tax, but high sales taxes. It benefits the rich because the very wealthy spend an extremely small percentage of their income on actually buying goods. If you make $500 million, you're not spending a big chunk of that on groceries.
Right. But for someone who's living paycheck to paycheck is literally spending almost all of their income.
Right, if not all of it.
Right.
So that extra tax hits 100% of their income and less than 1% of the income of the wealthy. It's a fucking scam to benefit the rich. That's all Donald Trump ever has done. I'm getting upset. We knew this. This should not be a surprise to anyone. And obviously, if you're listening to us,
We're preaching to the choir.
Right, you know this already, but god damn it, it's so obvious. And half the goddamn country couldn't see it. And that's what really irritates. Next, buying the dip.
Gotta buy up that debt, baby.
Gotta buy the dip. It's gonna get taxed soon. With the stock market plummeting multiple times during this timeline of events that we went through. Announcement of tariffs, announcement of pauses, announcement of more tariffs, announcement of pauses again. Other countries announcing retaliatory tariffs. It was a goddamn roller coaster. Wealthy investors took advantage of that situation by buying up stocks when they were low, particularly if they somehow knew that there would soon be another announcement that tariffs would be paused, which would then bring up the market. This, of course, is illegal, and we all know there's no way that our current president would ever commit financial fraud.
Because he has a clean record.
Yes, he is not in any way a convicted felon for this exact thing.
And banned from holding a nonprofit in New York.
In other news, less than 4 hours before the announcement that tariffs would be paused on the 9th, Trump shitted. I don't know what the Truth Social adjective is or adverb. I shitted. I'm going with shitted.
I thought it was truth.
He shitted this. He shitted this on Truth Social. This is a great time to buy DJT. Like, you didn't know who it is. It says Donald J. Trump. It's got that, we've commented on it before, that stupid avatar of his lumpy ass face with the flag. He's the only one who fucking uses Truth Social anyway.
Right.
But he put his initials in case you weren't sure that it really came from him.
Well, and I thought that was another sign of buy his other specific DJT stuff. As in buy the DJT coin. As in, I'm almost positive I just saw articles, but buy the Truth Social stock, because guess who's about to sell his millions of dollars of Truth Social stock that he just announced
well, it
several days
say
ago.
This is a great time to buy DJT. It says this is a great time to buy exclamation mark DJT.
But I thought that was why he
that's probably what they're going to say when they are currently under investigation for insider trading.
Yep.
But he shitted that out. Like I said, less than 4 hours before the announcement that the tariffs would be paused, when the market was at its low point and before it shot up. And again, people celebrated this as oh, see, he fixed the markets. It's so stupid.
But Jason,
it's holding a gun to your own head.
But Jason,
and then celebrating that you saved a life when you don't shoot yourself.
He didn't break any laws, Jason, because as far as I was aware, this truth was shitted out to everybody. So everyone had access.
Oh yeah, we all have the same ability to buy millions of dollars in stock. We all have that same ability equally.
And look, for the 0.5 listeners that we have that are actually probably conservative, I don't even care if there's
yourself. I'm probably going to have to edit that out.
Oh, really? I don't even care if this is letter of the law illegal or not. You cannot tell me this is ethical by any measure, again, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do this for the rest of my life, apparently. If a Democratic president did this and, like Jason said, destroyed the economy, and then right before he stopped the tariffs and tried to put a quick pause on the trade war that he haphazardly caused, and then just gave a like, hey, now's a great time to buy, wink, 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 Fox News would lose their goddamn minds. Ben Shapiro, who's been super critical, which I'm blown by that, to be honest, of Donald Trump's actions during all this, would also be losing his goddamn mind. Benny Johnson would lose his goddamn mind. There is no way in hell this would ever be accepted by anybody else other than Donald Trump.
And the final reason, weakening the dollar. You may think that's crazy, but in fact...
But we're in the Donald Trump administration, so who knows?
Well, in fact, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance both have a long history of saying the dollar is overvalued on the global market and have consistently pressured the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, which would lead to a less valued dollar. It's not crazy. You can find quotes everywhere from the two of them saying this exact same thing.
You can also find them literally asking the Federal Reserve in the middle of all this, like
to lower interest
4
rates.
days ago, to lower interest rates right now because of that exact same thing.
Right.
This is not a long time. Like I don't know if you saw this, Jason, but like they are like they as in conservatives and Republicans are posting like a 30-year clip from like Nancy Pelosi saying she liked tariffs one time and saying, see, Nancy Pelosi's the same as Donald Trump. What do we got here? We're not doing that. This is not like a 30-year-old clip. This was from like 3 days ago.
Right, and they're going to keep doing it. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent. Obviously, pressure from the White House does impact their policies. Most economists believe that a trade war would actually increase the value of the dollar because it would cause less global spending and result in more of the U.S. currency being held in reserve. That's why it is known as the reserve currency. That is a major reason for the current strength of the dollar. The trade war would also likely lead to resurgent inflation. Yay, that's what we all want, right? More inflation, which would then cause the Federal Reserve to increase interest rates to combat it.
I want to also just reiterate as well. This is also why you're going to hear very soon why they need to fire Jerome Powell from the Federal Reserve right now. And I've been hearing a lot of talk about that as well. So I'm sorry to disrupt you, but like, I just want to point that out for everyone as well. Like, you're going to hear the name Jerome Powell and about how corrupt and how horrible he is.
Again, because it happened during the first Trump administration too.
Right. And how they're going to focus on him to make sure that he can put some little crony in the Federal Reserve and then just go crazy.
But what we actually have seen with the chaotic roller coaster implementation of tariffs is it caused low consumer confidence, even lower than what we saw during the Great Depression 100 years ago. And it's created such animosity between the U.S. and even our closest allies that the dollar is actually lowering in value compared to many other currencies. I'm going to take a trip to Japan later in the year. I've been watching the value of the yen compared to the dollar because of that, and it's been steady at like near all-time highs, and it has actually started to creep down now because of all of this uncertainty. A lower dollar would theoretically increase the volume of goods being sold and make manufacturing more attractive domestically, particularly by global corporations that have revenue streams in multiple currencies. So again, this only benefits the wealthy, as they would be the ones to profit.
Are you saying you don't have companies that deal with different country or different country currencies?
Meanwhile, the average American would see a dramatic loss in their own buying power and standard of living.
Well, because those losers don't have
right, because you don't
Iraqi
have
denarii and
you don't have a
Japanese
multinational corporation.
Yeah.
All those things we talked about, why manufacturing isn't feasible in the United States. Well, one way to make it feasible is to crater the dollar and destroy our economy. I mean, then we'll all work for fucking peanuts like they want.
Yeah, I mean, well, for what it's worth, that is a way to lower the dollar.
It is.
That is a way.
And it is a way to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Make us a third world country.
Well, Well, again, this is just people who've like read The Jungle in middle school and be like, I want to be like that guy who owned that factory. Like they just saw it as like an aspirational tale.
Right. Yeah, you see that a lot today with like modern media and everyone identifying more with the horrible villain, like all of the people that are like, oh, Walter White, he was the good guy in the story.
He was the one who knocked. And I also want to be the one who knocks.
But what I want to end this episode on
is a promise that everything's going to be okay.
Oh yeah, this is going to go real well. Is a history lesson. That's what I love to do on our episodes. I love doing the research and looking up history and things. Well, as it turns out, we've done all this before. The Fordney-McCumber Act of 1922 and the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 were some of the most aggressive and punitive increases in tariffs on foreign goods in American history.
Well, history was only so much at that time.
It's 100 years less than it is now, but still. In 1922, the tariffs didn't do much to dampen the roaring U.S. economy at that time, which had little competition from war-torn Europe, which was still recovering from World War I, and much of Asia and the rest of the world still industrializing. But only 8 years later, the 1930 Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, enacted by Herbert Hoover in 1930, but was actually passed by Congress in 1929 and had already started this trade war happening globally by that time. Then, I guess coincidentally, we had the great stock market crash at the end of 1929. Maybe a coincidence, maybe had a lot to do with it. Who's to say? It caused, when it was signed, a global trade war, which saw almost every country implementing large tariffs, both on the US and their neighbors. It caused an international banking collapse.
Cool.
The effect of that greatly deepened, if it didn't cause, it greatly deepened the Great Depression domestically. And it even set the stage for World War II. You may think that's crazy, but in the wake of this isolationism, protectionism, we might call it America First ideology spreading throughout the world as everyone tried to hold on to what they had, political extremism became popular, particularly in a country you may have heard of, Germany, who was looking for something to blame for their loss in World War I and their dire financial situation at that time.
And they elected political outsider.
Somebody who said it like it was.
And who wasn't part of the mainstream.
Who blamed immigrants for all of their problems. Kind of echoey a little bit. And outside of Germany, Japan relied heavily on global trade, as of course they are a small island nation that does not have a lot of resources, so they need to import almost everything they use. The trade war set them on the path to empire building. It showed them they needed more territory. This was the days of the empires. So they reasoned that this was going to be their way to survive in this new trade war era. They invaded Manchuria, China, and Korea, and created the Japanese Empire, which would then, of course, join forces with Germany and Italy and become the Axis powers. I don't think any of that is too overblown. That is what resulted from the last trade war we had 100 years ago. The largest economic collapse in U.S. history, and the worst war to ever happen in human history. Now, what got the United States out of that mess?
Freedom.
Caused by the trade war?
Freedom.
Socialism.
Oh.
FDR's New Deal, along with all of the government spending and subsidizing industry during World War II. And maybe also the fact that most of the rest of the world's industry was bombed out during the war helped maybe a little bit too.
So it was freedom.
Yes, all of the freedom bombs that dropped on all of those factories across Europe and Asia.
Well, and those 2 freedom bombs in Japan.
So after all of that, if you want a silver lining,
We had the French Revolution Part 2.
like I said, Herbert Hoover was the president who signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, named after two senators, or two congressmen at the time. They all lost their next elections in humiliating fashion. Unfortunately, we never learn these history lessons before it's too late. And I think at this point, it is too late to do anything about the course that we're on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're at the point right now where we are in a new chapter in world trade and general reputation of the United States of America.
And maybe we're wrong. Maybe Donald Trump really is that stable genius, and he will guide the world in a brave new direction. But I doubt it.
Yeah, me too. And the best part about this whole thing, Jason, who knows what's already wrong by the time people hear this.
And what's changed? Yeah, by the time it gets uploaded, I'm sure we're going to be...
That's the game I want you to play, listener who's now hearing this at the end. I want you to go back.
Update our show for us.
Yeah, do me a favor. Go back and listen to it again on a different device.
And record a new segment.
Of you reacting to all the things.
Yeah, everything that's happened between us recording this and you listening to it.
And then we'll send you our Buzzsprout account, and then you can just upload that to our feed. And that'll be our next episode.
We always end on such a positive note.
Well, if I had to end this on anything, it's that I too will look for an article I could just read for my next episode.
It was nice. It was like half of the episode. I just got to read one AP News article. Well, see, I was copying everything from the article at one point, and I was like, why am I doing this?
Just read the
just
article.
reading the whole thing anyway.
Right.
See you next time.
We are not updating you next time, so do your own work. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to get in contact with us, you can find us on Blue Sky at ThinkProPod, or you can reach out to us via email at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.
I finally feel well and truly old.
Yeah?
All of the memes and everything that's going around about the Minecraft movie, I have no clue what any of it is. Never played Minecraft. Don't know what anyone's talking about. That movie looks terrible, but I guess it has good memes or something. But it's like the first time I've really felt like, okay, this is the children that are that are doing this, and I don't know anything about it. Like, I have no idea what a chicken jockey is.